We are live and recording. This is going to be a socionics typing session using Model A. Um, Later, potentially included, is a subtype, which is DCNH, and that is in Model G. I'm going to be asking a series of questions. I would like for you to treat them as if they were open-ended. Don't feel the need to feed me anything. Just answer openly and honestly and organically to the questions. Also, this is not me telling you your type. This is me giving you my suggestion on what I think you are. So please use this as just another data point in crafting your own identity, for only you know yourself to the highest degree. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
An exciting day. We're typing June today. All right.
I
How do you respond to the emotions of others?
don't. I'm kidding. Um, I want to solve them.
You want to solve them. Okay.
Yeah, depends on the emotion, obviously. But the first thing that strikes me is that comes to mind. That is when an emotion is problematic. That makes me want to solve it.
Okay.
I see them as like puzzles that I want to understand better as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I pictured you trying to solve happiness, and I thought that was particularly funny. Quit smiling,
Just
damn it.
thinking of that too. I was thinking of that too. Um, when it comes to like other kinds of emotions that aren't the emotions that I'd like to solve, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Although that's my first reaction to that question, it might be my reaction to someone's happiness would be to, I don't know, depends. Do I like the person? Do I not like the person? I think there's a lot of nuance there to be like mm, taken into account. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I used to be very bad at this as a teenager. Like I had classmates that would be sad before or anxious before exams, and I wouldn't understand why. The things happen such that it often happened that I I'd ask them, why are you nervous, and they'd say, because I am gonna fail this exam, and I ask, why do you know you're gonna fail the exam? Because I didn't study, and to me it seemed ridiculous that they were feeling anxiety about that, given that they knew they hadn't studied. So what would they expect but to fail? Like, since there was some kind of logic to the fact that they would fail, the anxiety seemed to be unreasonable to be feeling, if that makes sense.
Yes,
But
illogical.
illogical, yeah. But as I grew up, I got really into these kinds of things, and um, I studied this a lot because I question a lot, like what is happening and how people are feeling and the whys and hows of it, to my own detriment, social detriment. But
Mm-hmm.
it led me to understand like people very much, very well. I'd say so. Even if I still act like um in certain ways these days, it's really because that is what's easiest for me, not because that's what's um it's not the best of my ability, it's just what I can most easily do.
Her ADHD kicked in, as she was saying.
Right, right.
Yeah. But no, I totally understand. You gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet, you know? I was just
Yeah.
thinking about that the other day. How you have to make a few social faux pas, and then hopefully you make those faux pas with people who don't matter in the future. I was, me and,
Exactly.
yeah, Mobius and I were talking about that exact same thing yesterday.
Yeah, it's that much.
Hmm.
I think that's that's about it. I can't think of really anything else I'd like to talk about regarding this question.
Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and move on to the next. Can you tell me about any reoccurring problems you've been having in your life?
Recurring problems? Um, my relationship with my mom and dad, my mental health, I guess, my um um I don't know what else. Like, oh, I used to get banned from communities all the time. Um, because I was like very assertive and questioning and like, you know, impervious to um like people's advice on how I should behave instead, if that makes sense. And I just say, well, I'll do whatever I want to do. It's not your business. Like who I am and so forth. Um, that doesn't happen much anymore. That some sort of maturity overcame me in that regard.
Yeah, I actually kind of appreciate that a little bit. I remember the other day when somebody joined chat was screaming about all of these awful, horrible things, making jokes about them. You told them to shut up and go away. And I was actually like based, I was actually like hype about that. So like it's not purely a negative trait, I would say.
No, it's not purely a negative trait. I agree. But in a lot of communities, if there's like this social consensus that we are to lie to each other about things, or like upkeep this social harmony, or like if there's a trend in the behavior that I dislike, I'm not going to fit in, if that makes sense. Easily. Like I'll have to pretend a lot in order to fit in. And I probably won't be able to do that. Even though I do see myself as a bit of a chameleon, it's not something I do like, you know, because I enjoy doing. It's more something I do because I know how to do.
Yes. Something you must do.
Yeah, exactly. I can do it, I do it well. I don't enjoy doing it. If I could, I'd just be authentic all the time.
Which is perhaps the ultimate good that we could ever be, is to be ourselves all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let the
In a, in
chips.
a way, in a way, I mean, oof, I mean, if you are like I think there's a time and place to be yourself in life, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Like, if somebody's frustrating or agitating, sometimes it's best to practice patience, and that patience will see you through the condition more than just letting your anger fly could ever do.
Exactly, exactly. Like there's nuance to this too, is my point.
Yeah, yeah. But I always think that there's a reason for every perspective, and that you shouldn't dull the perspectives for the sake of like their utility. You should let those interactions happen organically, and then through those interactions, people individuate and ultimately learn the lessons that they need to learn.
Exactly.
But
Actually, I agree. Something I think is that the best teachers are teachers who just guide you, if that makes sense, and allow people. And the best teacher might be life itself, in a way, as far as wisdom goes, right? Because obviously there is academic learnings as well. And in that case, you still need a good teacher, and a good teacher will be not just good at academics, but also good at teaching
yes,
onto
yeah,
that topic. Um, I do think that one of the best things a teacher can do for you is give you the room to make mistakes, and maybe that's like a personal thing because based on my learning style, because
yeah.
but people definitely learn very well when they make certain mistakes, and seldom do they learn as well if they are just learning from a book. It's very rare is the person that can just read a book and become wise
Yes.
down their years.
And I think we were talking about that, the futility of philosophy, which was something I gave more thought to ultimately, because I'm like, at some point that it's like other people's ideas might be useful, but also at the same time, living else's life might not be your path, and then you'll have to ultimately return to who you were.
Exactly. This is true.
Yeah.
Yes, we've discussed I've discussed the idea of futility of philosophy. It just you know, philosophy is, I don't want to go over it again, but really quickly, I don't believe it is like exactly useful. I see it as more of a hobby for the mind, you know? It's like it can be a source of information if you feel lost in, like, I don't know, it's like going to the pastor to because you are like lost in life or something, or just seeking guidance or something. And a lot of philosophy is like very well worded, like perspectives and like very well worded information on what life can teach you, if that makes sense, and observations on life. And I feel like as I've tried to read philosophy over the years and have read philosophy over the years, nothing much has been like a radical, like, like this radical, nothing has really brought on a radical shift in my life or a way of thinking. If anything, it has been just a further confirmation that some of my observations, if not a lot of them, were perhaps in this direction that the philosophers also were. But in philosophy itself, they say it is said that no one is actually correct. It is all up for debate or so on forth, right? Something along those lines. I can't exactly remember. It's like we can't know everything or something. So it's just self nullifying in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It was fun to take a little detour. Let's get back to the next question. All right. What are your hopes, dreams, and aspirations?
Hopes, dreams, and aspirations. In personal ones, right? Like what I want to achieve.
Yes. I'm going to reword that question next time I ask it for sure. All those words are too similar. I need to have words of different domains that mean the same thing.
Because like what I hope for is like different from what I dream about, and my aspiration is also different. I feel like these three words can be like three different things. Like I aspire to be I want like what I want to be in life, if that makes sense. So I'd love to become a professor
Yes.
um in university, and obviously there's back it's like plan B, plan C for that as well. Like if I can't achieve that, I'll achieve something else. And part of that is writing. I'm attempting to write a book. Um, as far as hopes and dreams, I guess I dream for a life that is very academic, surrounded by people I care about, who care about the things life has to teach them with a passion, I think, that care about the world, humanitarian people, I guess. Um, I very much see life that way. That I'd like to be surrounded by people in that fashion. and to be working, to be researching as well. The kinds of things that I guess I want to further my understanding of people, if that makes sense. Because I've seen it as a trend in me that I seek to understand that which I am perhaps really not very good at.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to turn that learned skill into something that I could perhaps not monetize, but like something that others can use as well. Because I
Something that.
have such a worded approach to understanding people versus someone who intuitively perhaps understands people. Like I had to do such trial and error, right? Like I described earlier. And so yes, a professor, a researcher in psychology, which is what I'm trying to head to right now in university. And I want to be surrounded by good people. Just simply put, good people who work towards their things and do their best. I'd like to have a good relationship with my parents at some point, but I don't think it's exactly going to happen because they have like very different aspirations for me than the ones I do. I'd love to have a stable relationship. I'd love to, you know, I'm very traditional in a way in that I'd like to have like a vacation house and my house, maybe an apartment somewhere fancy, like owning homes appeals to me, things like that.
Okay.
I like to get good at certain things as well. I can enumerate a bunch of things I like to get good at for the sake of improving my finances, But,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely renting out apartments and maybe even playing the stock market, things like that. Investments in general. I'd love to be an investor.
I think that you would make a very good professor. Be interesting. I certainly think you have a lot of wisdom and you have a very scientific mind that I think yields some very interesting and good perspectives, thought provoking. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we move on?
No, that about does it. Like I aspire to a lot. I want a lot out of life, but I don't want to keep going. I think that's about it. Those are like the main things.
Yep.
You know, you can keep
Yeah.
going.
This is turning out to be quite a long typing session, so I appreciate that. But of course, it's meant to be kind of like listened to at length. I think if I'm going to be posting these online, but I don't know.
Yeah.
When I'm doing the research on these and I'm having to deconstruct the videos, that's going to be the difficult part.
Oh, for sure. I understand that.
All right, but patience is a virtue, they say.
Patience is a virtue, indeed, and it's something that we all have to learn at some point. You know, we start out as kids. We don't know much about patience. I don't know if there's anything less patient than a child, right?
Yeah.
And as we grow, we kind of grow into it. For some reason, most people, the older they are, the more patient they are, even though time might be running out. Kind of contradicting, but there it is.
All right. Next question.
Yes.
You are elected the dictator of your home country to solve its problems. I missed a part. You're elected to be the dictator of your home country for 6 months to solve its problems. What do you do?
Well, excuse me. I'd establish a government. um, like first of all, I'd establish a government that would basically, I don't know if it would be solving anything. I don't believe that any problems. I believe that there is such a high degree of entropy in humankind that problems like that, problems of the home country, quote unquote, just can't be solved until the human species itself evolves enough that it becomes akin to some sort of utopic bird of paradise being, if that makes sense. Like,
Yes, it does actually.
yeah, thank you. I've given this quite some thought when I was a teen. Um, but I think a good segue into this evolution of mankind would be a system where everyone gets to vote. And I think for those 6 months, what I would do so that people can experience the weight of voting is everyone can vote for every law that anyone wants to pass. Organize a system by computer, people go online, they set up like little forums, little like bulletins of laws they want to pass. An AI system conglomerates every law that everyone wants to pass. People vote based on numbers, based on every single individual in the nation, because this is simple to do. You do it in your computer, you do it through letter, everything can be arranged in that way. It's not even expensive, and whatever law needs to pass will pass. That's what I would do. If nothing else, to teach people the value of voting and the value of participating in your communities and in society.
Yes. Okay. The shocking part, June, is that you were the only person that answered remotely similarly to how I would answer the question, which is that the state of politics is contingent upon the average functioning of the people within the society. So what I do doesn't matter as long as the population stays dumb and apathetic.
Right.
So that's really fascinating. All right. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, that's what I would do. I don't have anything else that I would want to do because, yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Do you ever use the affect of others in decision making? Examples of this can include body language, facial expression, or tone of voice.
Not in decision making, but I will lie and say things like, yes, you're right. Or, yes, I will do that, and then just not do it, if that makes sense. Like, I can understand people's body language, but I don't care, if that
Yes.
makes sense.
You smooth things over, but then also continue on your own course.
Yes, true. That's
Oh,
what I do.
this is really interesting. Okay. Do you ever intentionally change the emotions of another person for a goal or outcome?
The intentions of another person. If I've ever changed the intentions of another person for a goal or an outcome,
Like their emotional state. The examples of this can be, you might brighten somebody's day, or another one that I've heard, which was very interesting because the person was smart enough to pick this one
if
up.
I've, mm, if I've ever intentionally like brightened someone's day, I mean, I think I have. tried to like make someone feel better about things, but it, I can attest to this that it's not my like natural thing to do. Like
Yeah.
if I see someone sad, I will try to make them feel better, but it won't be like in an emotional like way. In that I won't be saying like, "You seem to be feeling sad. Allow me to make you feel better," by just putting like a cork on it and like we'll forget about what ails you. It's more likely that I will attempt to fix it, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Or
I
like approach the problem with a more like, you know, um what's the term? With a more like not step by step, but with a more organized way of like, okay, so this is going on. What can we do about this? And let's work on it together, you know?
okay. All right. How do you respond to criticism?
Mm, I respond very poorly to my mother's criticism, but I think that's because she's my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And by poorly, I mean like it used to hurt me a lot because I was just a teenager. But as I grew up, now I just like insult her back. My mom's unhinged. My mom's unhinged. So
I'm sorry.
I, I literally like don't give a shit. But that's the only person whose criticism really like might still affect me, or my dad's criticism.
Okay.
I really don't care about anyone else's criticism.
Can you think about maybe times or instances when the criticism had been positive?
Yes, like good criticism, that is always like I'm very good at discerning good, bad, and unintentional and intentional criticism. And I've been to art school as a teenager, so I've heard lots of good criticism in my life. Criticism done well. That's what I mean. Um, First, people given me like good criticism and on how I act as well, and I tried to follow it. Sometimes, not all the times. Even if the criticism was good, I didn't always care because it's like even if it was well done, I just disagree that we all need to be the same person. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when people give criticism to others on their behavior, it's usually like you're not harmonizing well enough with the community or like the people here, and you need to act more like us. And to me, that's like where people go to die, you know, like where everything goes to die when everyone is like harmonizing and singing in the same note, just perfectly in tune. I don't think that's like a good, I don't think that's conducive to good anything.
Yeah. Okay.
How's it going?
We're in the middle of a typing session.
Oh, okay.
You sounded so sad. Oh.
It's good.
Yeah, he did.
It's good, homie G. Enjoy.
Yeah. Feel free to stay and listen. You can add little comments if you feel like that you can help, but yeah. I mean, I guess that really depends because the only time I really hear helpful comments is when people know the person and then offer really good insight. Like the person's kind of like downplaying their flaws, and then their friend or girlfriend comes in and is like, "No, you do this all the time," and then that's I always find that helpful.
I would literally talk mad shit about June. It would be terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, enjoy.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
So,
How do you handle money?
how do I handle mining?
Money.
What?
Currency.
Money. Money.
Euros.
I don't have a lot of money. I'm bipolar. I've had manic episodes where I overspend. So that's basically it.
It's kind of a tainted result, isn't it? Yeah, we can't get a clear shot.
Yeah, there's nothing to that because I am bipolar. I I have debt because of having spent overspending money, having overspent money during my manic episode. So after I pay the debt, I don't have much left, and then I just like I don't know, like last month was terrible because I had to buy a plane ticket and a taxi, cab drive, and I had an issue with my tooth, so I had to spend like 600 euro almost on or more, 700 euro altogether on my tooth. So
Well, that's not that bad, I would say, with the exchange. Well, actually, I don't know. That might be kind of like mid grade because sometimes teeth can get expensive. It can go into thousands of dollars over here. So,
yeah, it's because I was in Slovakia, so it actually ended up being pretty reasonable. If it was in Portugal, it would have been 1,000 or something. Yeah, as well.
mhm.
Which is thankfully this happened like this way because I wouldn't have had money to pay my tooth in Portugal. So
Interesting.
yeah, would have had
Okay.
to resort to my mother's help, which I'd rather not.
I'm gonna resort to one of my old questions to make up for the lack of this question because this is obviously a tainted result. I think you answered with something external to typology, something I really can't grasp upon. So you have a sink leaking in your apartment or house. How do you fix it?
Oh, I'd probably Google the problem. I might as well Google the problem. That's what I've always done. I used to fix my own issues at my home when I lived on my own. I still fix issues in this house when I can.
Okay.
If I'm asked to fix them, I fix them. Because my dad actually taught me a lot of stuff, and what he hasn't taught, I just Google it. If I can't fix it, then I'll call my dad, and he will tell me how to fix it more often than not. So
Okay. Well, that question actually proved to be pretty useful, actually. That's cool.
cool.
Is your room clean?
It's clean, but the organization could be better. But I say this, but it's way more organized than most people's bedrooms, I've noticed. So I don't know what to say anymore. Like, yeah, I might say it's pretty organized. Like, I have things inside little baskets. I have things on like divisions in a shelf. Um, my clothes are pretty much all folded or hanging. I'd say it's pretty organized, CJ.
Okay. When you do clean your room, how and why?
Because one should clean their room. If that makes sense. Like, I don't like
Yes.
it if my room is disorganized too much. Um, like, I'll be honest, my mom has OCD, and she gets pretty up there with disorganization. So I've always been used to like having my bedroom very neat because of that. So I have to keep up with that. Otherwise, my mom will yell at me. So, and she doesn't just yell at someone, she loses her mind at someone.
I see. I have talked to so many people who have that exact same pattern of a mother. I am truly blessed. I have a meditation teacher for a mother.
It is so nice. I'm
my
so jealous.
yeah, My mother's anger like is so short term. It is like 10
She
seconds of anger and then it completely gone for weeks at a time.
is she single?
No, for I mean for fuck's sake, dude, why are you asking that?
It's a joke.
uh, all right. Um, super good answer. Like this is a lot of meat. I can like rip apart that for a while. Okay.
Like, I can go a little bit in depth to how it used to be. Like, I used to want to really please my mother with cleaning, and I'd clean like to the maximum of my extent, and she'd still be upset that it was not clean enough. So during my teenage years, I didn't do shit because I felt like if she's just gonna clean over me anyways, what's the point of cleaning?
Yeah.
Because she would literally go over everything I had just cleaned. It seemed completely illogical to me to do so, but um, these days I do my own organizing. Otherwise, she's gonna do it, and she organizes everything in ways that make sense to absolutely no one. And then she comes in and does whatever she wants to, but at least she won't be messing around with my things, touching them in ways I don't like them to be touched. Like, I hate it when people touch my things.
Oh man. It sounds like your mother might be NI polar. Because I have an NI polar parent.
Yes, yes, TJ, yes.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
At least I think she is. She might not be. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely sounds like EJ temperament.
Yeah.
Because my dad's EJ and NI polar. And everything, if you leave it out for too long, it will get placed randomly and it will go away forever.
Yep. I don't understand that. I don't understand how she has that ability. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, but I think also one of the observations that I made is maybe the reason that you just don't really find the need to please people is because you learned at an early age that it's so futile.
Oh yeah, for sure. It
Because
really is.
it sounds like your mother would project onto your work all the time.
Oh yeah, she did. Actually, it's not just that. I told this to Warden the other day that even when I had like 98% in a test out of 100, and I say even when, which is like stupid because that's pretty much every test. Like I'd have 98, 95, 96. Sometimes I did have 100, but like my dad would react like, "What happened to the other 2%? What kind of sarcastic ass joke is this? I'm a kid. I'm not getting this joke. Is this even a joke?" He doesn't seem to be like teasing me or anything.
Yeah.
It's like, like it just, it just made me feel like there really was no point.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's funny too. Um, and that's really funny that it's instead of looking at the positive, you know, they look at the missing 2%. But what about the 98%? Why don't you look at that?
Right?
Oh
Sure,
man,
I'll drink some water.
parents. They try their best, and then we ultimately become them in 20 to 30 years.
Mm.
I don't know. Hopefully, so I think some people get better with generations, and others get worse with generations. I think it depends on the competency of the parent. Competent parents
Mm.
probably produce incompetent children, and then incompetent parents probably produce competent children. If I had to guess.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think it's as linear as that. I'm sure there's nuance to that, but like,
Absolutely.
in a way, if your parents are incompetent, you might learn by contrast,
Yes.
you know? And maybe if you're the type of person who learns by contrast. But there's a lot of incompetent parents out there with incompetent children, if you think of like, um, you know, parents who steal or are like in the kind of circumstance in which they commit a lot of crime. Their children just grow up in that environment and commit crime too.
Yeah.
For example.
I think it's probably when you have the parent and child align in segments of the personality as well, or temperament and such, trait theory.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on.
Let's go.
Do you find it easy to relax?
Yes, I do. I'm
Interesting.
very often relaxed.
Very often relaxed. Okay.
Yeah, most of the time I'm relaxed. I know I don't seem it. The way I talk is definitely more seemingly uptight than the way other people talk, but I'm actually very relaxed. It's just my posture in life that is perhaps observant or like stoic. I don't know. I'm relaxed.
I think I have your subtype figured out at this point. And I'm pretty certain of your type, but we're gonna fill out all the questions. Just so we have more information, because data is wonderful.
Okay, let's go.
Making a beautiful tapestry and letting you express yourself simultaneously. Me and Lazuli had an extended conversation on how beautiful that is. That these typing sessions just allow people to like really talk about themselves and dig deep.
Yeah, people don't often get to do that, do they? Only really in typing sessions, psychologists, therapists, things like that.
Yeah, I mean that's why I always take the role of the listener. I've talked a little bit more because I feel like that we've had a correspondence and interesting things to talk about. But it definitely is. It's like one of those things where I always try to yield the floor when giving typing sessions so the other person can truly express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Although, to me, it isn't absolutely necessary that we continue. Like, talking about myself isn't exactly my favorite hobby.
Okay. Um, I think we should continue. I think we should definitely continue.
And let's. And let's.
All right.
Because it
We're
might get
only
interesting anyway.
we're
I
we're
could learn about myself.
yeah. We're just over halfway through.
Okay, let's go.
How do you manage time?
Time?
Yes.
Time. That's a good question. At the moment, I don't have much to do. But when I do have things to, as in like much to do, as in like, um, what's it? How do you say it in English?
When you're busy?
things to do that involve other people, commitments.
Yes.
I don't have a lot of commitments at the time, so it's not like I have to like take other people into account and manage my time around that, because that's something I really care about. But yeah, I manage my time in a very laissez-faire fashion.
Mm-hmm.
We
Oh, that no, that's exciting because you just gave me exactly what I was looking for. There's the fucking nugget right there. I love that.
because I don't really enjoy like I care about time. I care about other people's time. My time, I enjoy having a more organic, free flow form to it. Although I do a very similar thing every morning. Like I always eat the same breakfast and I always play video games in the morning. And then in the afternoon I may study and so on forth. Like there is some pattern to it, but it's not like it has a set time. Because I feel like when I put a time to it, I have a lot of expectations that I will function as well as I want to function at that given time, and that just never works out for me.
Okay. Fantastic. Would you consider yourself good at predicting the future?
I mean, I read tarot. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I've predicted a lot of trends in terms of fashion even.
Ooh.
Yeah. I used to be pretty good at things like that. Not used to, but like when I could buy more clothes, I used to be more into fashion. I did that a lot. I'd often go to stores and I'd find this piece and I'd wear it a lot, and all of a sudden I noticed all around me everyone was wearing it. It could have been a confirmation bias because I had it. I saw the people who had it too. But then again, it's like, to what extent is it that you are um, having a confirmation bias moment, or you actually were just buying that one item that was extremely desirable as well? Because I did go and like checked with like other items that I did not buy, and they just weren't bought as much as well, you know? Because there is such a thing as a stock in clothes stores. Yeah. I've predicted very well like that my parents would divorce around the time they would divorce. I've even predicted things like um sadly I saw it coming that one of my grandparents would have cancer, but not the specific type of cancer of anything. But I think that's something that anyone could have seen coming because you know, there's some eerie things like that, but it's like, I don't know. I think I'm just good at it because maybe I see patterns, you know, that I shouldn't see, or
Yeah.
that some people see, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I freaking love you, CJ.
Well, thanks, Artsy. That's a lovely thing for you to say.
That's really interesting, the one that you said about cancer, but I'm going to be quiet and
I
not
also
derail this.
I also predicted that I would be quitting school in high school. I knew that my mental health wouldn't last when I was like 7 years old. I was aware that my mental health wouldn't be good for the rest of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a
Um,
big one.
I knew that I would probably be a high school dropout at some point.
Yeah.
I forgot about this prediction. When I reached high school and dropped out, I had this moment where I was like, fuck, yeah. I was
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. See, I didn't understand my mental health until it improved.
Yeah, true.
For me, it's because I'm bipolar and I was a very like sad child. So I don't know. I was a very irritable and sad child at random, both irritable, both sad, both irritable and sad. Yeah.
This is so interesting because, like, I'm actually recognizing a pattern of the subtypes. So this is really great, June. This is really great.
All right. All right.
Share your insights after, CJ.
Yes, exactly. By the way, you are live and on recording, Artsy.
Oh, sweet.
All right. Um. Okay. Wow, that's really significant. That's all very significant. Next question.
All right.
Do you tend to categorize the external world?
Can you provide an example of that?
You take objects by a like characteristic and sort them by that characteristic. You put ideas in a certain bucket because of like what they what because of how they function or how they work. You know. So everything is like frameworked and structured and separate from each other and organized into to like patterns. Does that make sense? I mean, I really went into detail on that one.
Right. So let me think. Because I'm not sure if I do this. Therefore, I must not do this. If that makes sense. Because the way
Yes.
my brain works is more of a constant deep dive into this really deep ocean. It's very like dark blue, and it's like it's the space, but it also feels like the ocean. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Mm-hmm.
And it just, there's moments of like sparks of electricity, and that would be what I would equate to my thoughts. Hence the feeling of calmness and peace that I always feel as well. And everything that comes to my mind is more of an like spark of like eureka moment almost than
Yeah.
anything else. So do I categorize things? I don't think I do such an active task regarding the world, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like I don't actively like categorize things or think about things in categories. Like I just have this approach that's very like, it instantly makes sense, you know? That there's a category to it. I didn't have to categorize it beforehand.
Yes. Oh man, I hope I can retain that insight till the end of the typing session. Sometimes they shake out of my brain.
Write it down.
Yeah, I usually write it down on note cards, but I'm using that note card as a coaster.
TJ.
There's the NE, isn't it? Okay. I love that Warden CJ. I'm letting everybody down. Yeah. Sorry guys, I'm static. I'm not dynamic. I can't do that shit. All right.
I think I remember.
Okay. Are you consistent, June?
I'd say I am. I'd say I am. I am consistent with my own ever-changing values. I'm kidding. No. I'm not sure what consistent would entail. Like, I am consistent in some ways, inconsistent in other ways. I think we are all changing at all times. Thankfully, as we grow older, we change.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I've remained consistent in certain things, like my pursuit for turning my situation into a better situation. You know, things like that. I'd say there's consistency where there should be consistency, and inconsistency where there should be inconsistency.
Okay. Consistently inconsistent, perhaps, but I think that might be an overreach.
No, it's definitely what I said, which is I should be consistent, and those are things that are like, you know, maybe if you promise something, you stick to the promise, and I don't know. I try to remain flexible as well. I think that each case is a case. It's very difficult to say consistency is like a thing, you know? I'm definitely not like too bothered to change my mind. If I change my mind, I change my mind.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. How do you form your moral values?
I think they're a bit stronger than me, if that makes sense.
I'm sorry?
I think I formed them like everyone else did once I was a child. And as I grew up, I realized that other people exist too, and then I formed them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I formed them as the same as everyone else. But aside from that, they are like they were based on perhaps having done the wrong thing to others and then realizing I shouldn't have done that. I'm never doing that again. And other times it's just something I knew, you know. That's about it. So I form my moral values.
Okay. I really like that. That's cool. The pattern that I saw. Okay. How do you process your own emotions?
Um, Good question. Absolutely stumped. I'm kidding. How do I process my own emotions? I'd say I'm pretty good at processing emotions because I managed to remain like healthy about them. Like I don't bring it to other people, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I definitely don't. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I stick to myself with my emotions. And if anything, I'd go to a therapist or talk to someone who insists I should talk to them. In this case, usually my
Oh.
boyfriend. But I prefer to deal with them alone. To process them, I do things like listen to music that helps me. Listening to music that acts as a catalyst. I also like to think them through to understand them, and I feel like once I understand them or where they're coming from, why I'm feeling them, that I get a better grasp on them, and this allows me to release them. Like I bring them from the subconscious to the conscious, and that just like releases them from me. Um, but music helps this release, and also like um, there's just not a lot of strong emotions that I've had to reconcile with lately. You know, I've gained a lot of self control in that respect. Um, and even if I feel angry, it's very short lived. I never stay angry for a long time. I never stay anything like that for a long time. Like, I am bipolar, so if I do have a depressive episode, I will be depressed. And if I do have a manic episode, I will be manic. But as I am medicated correctly, it hasn't happened in a while, so.
Yeah. Okay. We are reaching the end here. We've only got just a few more left.
I see the finish line.
This started off slow, but it's finishing pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, might take less time than I expected.
All right.
Are you open to new ideas?
Yes, I am open to new ideas, but I appreciate testing them before I accept them. I love hearing new ideas. I love new things, but they have to withstand the trials, if that makes sense, if they are to be accepted into my ocean thing. I don't know, because I don't even perceive like I have this thing where ideas get to and stay there. Like some people say they have like a library in their mind. For me, it's like I accept the idea, it goes way deep into the subconscious, and
Yeah.
whenever I need it, it just pops back out, you know?
Wow. That's so cool. You're saying so much cool stuff, honestly.
Thanks.
All right. Do you like to travel?
Uh,
I do if it's for a long time. Like, I don't enjoy the sensation of being in a place for a short amount of time and having to see everything in a really constricted set of time. Does that make sense? But if I get to be in a foreign place for a long time, then yes, I'm all for it. Because then I can, like, at my own leisure, explore and experience and get to know the locals, you know? Like, get a feel for the place.
Yeah. Okay. Man, this one that I ask is so misunderstood. I've come to realize. Yeah, but I think we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next.
Right?
Do you proceed with caution or hesitate?
Do I hesitate a lot? Is that what you're saying? Do I hesitate?
Yes.
No, I don't hesitate much. I plan a lot. I'll be like thinking, I want to do this. 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 And I'll be like, how should I do this? I need this and this and that to align. And then I'll put it in the back burner and back into the ocean, so to say. And then when everything aligns, I just do it.
All right.
I don't hesitate a lot. Like when people are saying shit I don't want to listen to, I just say it. You know that?
That's great. Yeah, yeah.
I'm a happy trigger.
What Warden just put. I love words emojis. They're cracking my shit up. But yeah, that's such great advice. That's actually advice that I've given to people who are NI demonstrative before. What you just said. That's really cool. All right. Last question. How do you handle conflict with others?
Mm. um, by experiencing the conflict, going through it, and winning at it. I'm kidding. Uh, I don't know. Like, I took it head on, I guess, and I see it through. I'm very bad at avoiding conflict.
Okay.
But most of the time, I stay quiet and just let it, like, pass through me.
Oh.
Because I'm already 31 years old, so I've learned that it's wisest to just, yeah, it's wisest to just not engage, you know?
Yes.
And I just don't pick fights. That would otherwise, like, bring me unrest.
Wow.
But if I must, I do.
You literally stated that element verbatim, how it is in the literature. I love that. How many times that happens to me, I don't know. And people shit on the website that I read from too, but man, is it useful for typing. Oh my god. All right, so that's going to conclude the question part of the typing session. We're now going to move on to the results. First, we're going to start with Model A, and then there is going to be a DCNH portion because I am for sure 100%. I know what your subtype is. Like, if you aren't this, like, for fuck's sake, I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to quit.
Okay.
I'm going to start with a few of the rein-in dichotomies, not the Jungian dichotomies, but the rein-in dichotomies. There's several of the rein-in. I think there's like 12 or 15. I need to look that up. Then we're going to talk about the quadra system, and then we're going to get into the elements and their blockings, followed by the DCNH portion at the end.
Okay.
We're going to start first with rational versus irrational. Rational types lead with judging functions. They are people who are rigid and who, when they make a decision, they stick to that decision, see it through to the end. So when they start something, they finish it. They're more rigid in their presentation and speech and might be seen as uptight. And now, irrational types are people who are leading with a perceiving function or element, and they are more open-ended, wait and see, and situational. They tend to start projects and then move on to the next before finishing. So they can be working on things simultaneously. And they also be more fluid in the way that they interact and they behave. I believe that you're irrational, mostly because the things that are like the hard points that are frustrating in your life seem to be more situational than like personable. So you're not focusing on the information or like the processing of it. But I mean, of course you're focusing on the information. You're not focusing on the processing end of it, but the observation end of it. So you're seeing the patterns over and over. And those are the things that are irritating and frustrating you. You know, when you're talking about your presentation and how you act and behave, you're also talking about that you're relaxed and that you don't tend to have a lot of rigidity, but you can be perceived to have rigidity, but you don't experience it as rigidity. And so I also kind of see that you're very fluid in a lot of ways. You're very open-ended, and then you're not very imposing. You're more of a listener than you are of somebody who imposes. Now that's also introversion as well, which is one of the Jungian dichotomies. But I definitely think that you're irrational. Like clearly irrational. Sometimes it's if the subtype is contrary to this one, that can be more muddy. But your subtype is in cohesion with this.
Okay.
Now we're gonna move on to process result. This has nothing to do with like TE or TI or any of the elements. It's to do with the benefit rings. And in fact, the type that you are is on the same benefit ring as mine, so we're gonna have the same result on this one. So with result peoples, with result people, they are more focused on basically troubleshooting. So it's like they look at what they want to do and then they try to work backwards from that. So when they study or research things, they tend to jump around or try to look specifically for the information that they're going to apply. And then so they're going to be, well, of course we got the right, we had the right process because we got the correct results. By all means necessary fits under this category as well. Result types, on the other hand, are people who are thorough, people who are going to read all the way through the chapter. They're going to focus very specifically on aligning things correctly in order to get the correct result. So they're looking at everything that needs to be manifested in order to everything that needs to be controlled or manifested or understood in order to get that result. So they're much more specialist in that regard. I believe that you are a process type, and that you are demonstrating that thoroughness, especially when you're talking about the process of how you have conflict. There's a lot of different elements and fundamental foundations. You have a lot of things to elaborate on. You're not necessarily talking about starting with the result, but you're focusing on the process, so the learning of the information rather than the application of the information. So that's another thing that I'm kind of seeing. They often say don't type by these dichotomies, but I like to list them off because I think they give a better picture of the type in general.
Sounds good.
Next, we're going to move on to static versus dynamic. So with dynamic types, these are going to be people who are going to have an extroverted judging blocked with an introverted perceiving. So with the dynamic types, they're going to see things as fluid or happening in stages, as things being in a state of flux or continual change, and they often update easily, which means that they don't stumble over things, and they tend to look for things in a specific place. Static types, in contrast, are people who have an introverted judging and an extroverted perceiving blocked together. These are going to be people who are going to be rigid. So I know the words sometimes that just overlap, and I need to be careful with that. There's so much semantics in this system. But these are going to be people who are going to update their information very roughly. So it's going to be when they change their mind, it's going to be something completely different that they're looking at least by observation. And then they're going to see things as separate, and they're going to look broadly in order to understand things rather than through this like continual process or change. You are clearly dynamic. Like I think you probably could have guessed that just from listening to it, that you see things as a state of change or in a state of flux, rather than being this thing that it is right there, and it is that categorization and that's that thing. It's like, no, you always see it as very dynamic. You say you change over time and all these other things. and that it's not difficult for you to change your mind, and all sorts of other things where it's just like dynamic, dynamic, dynamic. All day, the way you make decisions is by external metrics, all day dynamic.
Okay.
Now we're going to move on to the quadra. Usually I use the dictator question to kind of suss this one out, with kind of support from other questions. I am under the impression that you are gamma, and so gamma is going to be FITE, SENI, on those two axes. Within the question that I asked, you looked at it within everybody's responsibility to sort of get the system to work correctly. And so what I'm basically saying is that you are looking externally at other people for sources of information. So on the logic, it's like clearly extroverted. You're also seeing things as kind of being so it's like in a democratic way. So the democratic types are going to see the ethical side of things as grounded and as people kind of like touching or interacting or contacting, where the aristocrats are going to be more unifying with the ethics. So they're going to see transcendent goals or ideals. So I definitely think that in the way that you talk about personal responsibility and individuals acting within a circuit to kind of behave towards these before these ideas that are kind of unifying. So logic is the unifying part of it. That is transcendent, and so people need to work together to reach these conclusions of ideas. And I know that might sound pretty subjective in the way that I analyze that, but I definitely think that you always find within gammas of this variety that they are always going to want to level the external playing field so that virtue can be shown within the lives of the people. They're pretty much going to say that you don't want to have the structure, but you want to have the competition, for example, and that the structure is the thing that you're not going to be so focused on. It's going to be the people's ability that you want to focus on and enhance and bring forth. Especially with gammas, it's more about other people's abilities, where the deltas are more about their own abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some examples where the deltas are focused on others quite significantly. Because, of course, the altruism of the aristocrat. So, now we're going to go ahead and move on to the blockings specifically. And we're not going to talk about it in the way that it's listed in Model A. I'm going to start with highest in dimensionality, the unvalued side of things, and then we're going to work down to lowest in dimensionality. And then we're going to switch to high dimensionality valued, and then work down to low dimensionality valued. The first blocking that we're going to talk about is the id. The id is a blocking that has elements that are going to be... I use elements and functions interchangeably, by the way. So it's going to be elements that are going to be strong but unvalued. These are going to be things that you're going to be good at doing, but are going to be that you're going to be dismissive of, and so then you're also going to kind of ignore them, or maybe not. You're going to actually maybe not ignore, but you're going to be focusing on things that are more intriguing, and then kind of working your way around to these. Even though when you do work your way around to these, you do a good job. Demonstrative is the first one within the blocking that we're going to speak of. It's 4-dimensional, unvalued. Demonstrative is an element that cannot be escaped from due to its strength, but it is not something directly implicit in the behavior. You're never going to see this really be a point source, but more so in the ether, that it exists by virtue of its strength rather than intentional usage. It's also fluid in comparison to its blocking of ignoring. So the demonstrative that I believe that you have is TI, and your knowledge of things is very cohesive and comprehensive. So it's like you don't struggle with relying upon your self-knowledge of things. I find that this allows people to be confident, and particularly in the way that you responded to the political question is a good symbol of strong TI, because you were confident in your answer. You weren't thinking of all the other people around you or all the other things. I mean, you were directly allowing these people into the circuit, of course, but you were also confident in the way that you answered. So you're very externally focused, with the logic, but you're also very good with the logic. When you're fixing sinks, for example, that it's like, I have all of this knowledge that my father has helped me with, but I'm not relying upon my own knowledge. I'm going to go to the easiest source of information. And so there's where the dynamic behavior is coming first. And then you're not seeing this static TI take precedent and then take up space and be implicated, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Now we're going to move on to its blocking, the ignoring. The ignoring is three-dimensional unvalued. The ignoring is rigid, and it is more like an on and off switch rather than just kind of continuously in the background. So it'll be something that you'll see in short bursts used to a great effect, but also not much at all. So you won't see it implicated that much. This one, I believe, for you is extroverted intuition, or NE. So with extroverted intuition, this is going to be somebody who is going to look at the potential of things or what could be. And so it's always changing of the situation to see what the potential could be. So it's looking at disassociated things that aren't directly related to what you're looking at, but could be helpful in the long run. Ideas that could be utilized in the future. I definitely think that you are demonstrating an openness, but also the openness that you are demonstrating, it doesn't seem to be through NE. Because you're talking about, is it allowed into my ocean, into my mental consciousness, in this abstract state of fluidity? It's on the outside, it's separate, and you let it in if it has some degree of utility or some degree of sense, rather than for the idea to be attained for its merit. And so that's kind of what you see with definitely id NE, is that I will adopt new ideas, but I only entertain them if they serve a purpose, especially when it's demonstrative. And then when it's ignoring, you see it kind of, you see it be a lot more scrutinized, I would say. And here I see your internal state taking precedence over the objective what else. No, I said that completely wrong, not objective. Over the what else could it be, the different situations, the different scenarios, if that makes sense, the static nature. Now we're going to move on to the next blocking, which is the superego. The superego are points of weakness and points of criticism from others. This is probably going to determine who you innately get along with. It is also going to be unvalued and weak. So first we're going to start with the role, which is two-dimensional unvalued. The role is going to be something that you could associate the person with being good at, but they're not directly good at it. It's something that will replace the base function at times when the ego blocking, we'll talk about that next, kind of agrees with it. So the role has to serve the primary purpose of like the main theme or heading of the personality, but can be worn as a mask in vocational means. That's why it's the role. You have a role of doing this, rather than this being innately you. I believe that your role is SI. I also believe because your subtype might actually be boosting this. So this is one of the things where some of your answers might make you look SLI, or ISTJ in Myers-Briggs terms. With SI role, you're going to find a person that when needed can focus on the grounded organization of things, but are really going to more focus on the strategy behind why things need to be organized. And so I didn't really hear you, especially in the way that you organize things, that you're talking about that you're directly organizing these things of its own merit because you cannot stand for it to be dirty or unclean like an SI user would. It's more of that there is virtue or there is reason behind the cleanliness of the things around you, if that makes sense, rather than it being, I admire this for the sake of itself. You're also talking about the strategies of how you organize things, rather than directly talking and saying, the towel on the floor, the dust on the desk, these things. It was more, I put things in baskets and I hang them up. So more general statements.
Yeah.
Also, you're saying that you have a state of being relaxed, which was interesting. I'm kind of relating that to your strongly irrational nature, where you're lacking the rigidity. Because you're also talking more so than it directly implicating an SI, mostly because other people are pointing out to you that you seem uptight or that you seem tightly wound. And that would, of course, be a criticism of someone who's SI ego. That they're going to be like, why is this person like so, why is this person orienting all these things externally? Why is this person so decisive? Is probably where that criticism is coming from. And so then, thus being super ego, even though yourself, you don't perceive yourself to be very tightly wound or uptight. So I think that that's also demonstrating that you're probably pretty good with your SI for one, as implicated by the subtype. Also by individuation as well, because of your mother being probably SI ego, that it came through a lot stronger than it could be. And so someone listening to this typing session at another time who's not me can be like, wow, she's an SLI. No, you're not an SLI. Don't believe it.
Okay.
All right. Now we're going to move on to the polar, which is blocked with the roll. The roll is rigid and load-bearing. The polar is fluid and not really all there. You'll find with the polar that the person can stack a bunch of information. It can also be called point of least resistance or vulnerable, by the way. They might stack information on this element all the time. They might learn about it because people are constantly informing them of it, but they never apply the information because they don't find that to be interesting. They don't find that to be useful. It's just one thing that doesn't happen. So you can use this, but it's never seen in the behavior. Never. So I believe that this one for you is extroverted ethics, or FE. So with the extroverted ethics, in the polar position, you're going to find somebody who is going to be dismissive of emotional states and conditions outside of themselves. And the reasoning for interacting or touching these emotional states is going to be more so resonance than responding to it fluidly in the moment. Excuse me. So there might be a rigid way that you interact with emotions, and other people might be kind of upset or disappointed with the rigidity of these emotions. You find paralleling others, and then tying together all the emotional objects in a space together. That's not what you do. You're more so that you understand or learn about the emotions. You're playing with them. You're strategizing with them. You're placing them externally. You're not necessarily interacting with them as web or fluid net that you swim through. Like a beta, for example, would say.
Yeah.
All right. Now we are going to move on to the valued elements. And we're going to start with the ego blocking. The ego is strong and valued. It is what you represent. It is who you are and what others look to you for. So starting with the base, 4-dimensional valued. Much like the demonstrative, it is strong and you cannot escape it, but this is what you are. This is what you represent. This is what you are extremely good at. I hear even so much so that some conditions of that can be that it is so good that the person recognizes when it's not good, or that it is also that this person actually might have imbalances in the rest of their life because that this is so overfixated on. I really didn't hear either of those. Interestingly enough, I didn't hear the lack of balance with yours. So the base, your base, I believe, is NI. Mostly because you are not regimenting the way that you deal with time. You're not grounding your efforts in time. It is something that you kind of go through. You have these similar structures and routines that you go through. Everything is like deeply symbolic, so it's not very grounded. It's not SI. It's also when you're very good at predicting or seeing the outcome of things. And you see everything in this constant state of flux or fluidity, moving through stages perpetually. It's never solid. It's never this TI structure that you directly interact with. It's always fluid, and that's what I found was very strong pattern throughout the entire typing session. I definitely saw that you see things as temporary. You see things as always changing. You gave me a lot of samples of how things were in the past, and NI loves to do that. NI will take data from the past in order to align it with how it will be in the future. That's one of the reasons why I don't like MBTI definitions of NI very well. The socionics definitions are a lot more concrete, as seeing it as this 4-dimensional observation, seeing things fluidly through time. Definitely your strong suit, definitely your strong point. You're doing this way better than other people around you, and you know it, and you've shown it and demonstrated that.
All right.
Now we're going to move on to the creative, and this is blocked with the base. It is constantly reassessing and realigning all the information coming down to the base, making it more palatable and nuanced. It's also an element that might not be super apparent on the surface, but it is always there, and it is so good that people will come to you for it. I believe that this one for you is extroverted logic, or TE. TE in the creative position is going to be a person who's externalizing their logic effectively. That's what the creative always is. It's what you bring to others. You know, what others are going to look for from you. Where the base is going to be what you correct others for, perhaps. Maybe that might not be direct correlation, but it's more like it's more of who you are rather than what you bring to the party or what you help with, if that makes sense. So maybe that wasn't maybe that was an any rather than a good grounded SI data point. But so with TE, this you're always looking at things externally. So you're solving goals, you're solving problems, you are working with others' emotions, you're forming your morality by the people around you. When you're learning about information, you go to the best source of that information immediately. You don't waste time trying to figure it out for yourself or modeling it for yourself like a TI user would. You are just immediately. What is the best and most pragmatic way to be able to solve the problem? And that's what you seem to focus on. It's what you seem to be very good at. It's directly implicated in a lot of your answers as well. Morality and problem solving, and your extroverted ethics. It's all over the damn place. It is so apparent when in the extroverted ethics questions, and that's why I believe that it's strong and valued.
I see.
Now we're gonna move on to the super id blocking. The super id are going to be elements that are weak but valued. They're going to be what you grow into, what you get better at, and what you integrate over time. We're going to start with the mobilizing. So the mobilizing is rigid in comparison to its blocking. The base is rigid in comparison to its blocking, to backtrack a little bit. But so the rigidity of the mobilizing is going to be pretty apparent. It's going to be the element that you're going to get better at with time. This is going to be the more conditional part of yourself. This is going to be how you kind of like ingratiate yourself or become more nuanced with other people. And it's also going to be what you get in trouble with if you don't use this well enough. So you can see that when with IP people, with IP temperament people, that they can get in trouble for their rigidity at times. Which is why I think MBTI thinks of IP as IJ, as them being rigid. I don't think that's correct. I think IP is a much better way to describe it because the fluidity and such of the NI and SI. So I believe that this one for you is introverted ethics. Mostly because I'm hearing this all the time, because the mobilizing is always very proud and very external. You are very proud of the FI. You're like, I am who I am, even when the people around me don't like it, which I applaud you for. I think that's just fantastic. I really admire that in you. But of course, it gets you in trouble a lot, and then so you're seeing a lot of the struggles relating to your FI. Everything that you were talking about and demonstrating earlier was so symbolic and so abstract. So it's like when you're introspecting, I was seeing so much of the FI. It is also said that within the subtype that FI can be boosted a little bit as well. So there's an interesting part. But when you're looking at your internal state, you had all this symbolism, and it wasn't hard categorizations. It was always this demonstration or this metaphor that you were describing. And so your introspective state makes so much sense as NI-FI. It just that the beautiful metaphor of yourself is your internal state being emotion with these lightning bolts of insight, all that thunder and electricity. I really like that, and I found that to be so cool. And especially when that metaphor came up again and again, I was always delighted.
Yeah, it painted the overall direction of what I was trying to say in a way.
Yeah, because the mobilizing is so proud and always and shown off. It's It's always, look what I have, world. And then the world might say, ah, that's nothing. It's low dimensionality, it's so funny.
Yeah.
um Now we're gonna move on to its blocking, which is suggestive. So the suggestive is the seeking. So it is this thing that is watery and weak. It will always latch on to the structure given to it by others. And you were also talking about with your suggestive SE, which is what I believe you have, that you were also very receptive and open, that you can't prevent a conflict, that the conflict happens, you navigate your way through it, and then you move on. You're very fluid with the SE. You're not beating other people down with it. The FI is really more the thing that gets in the way of other people than anything else. It's not your SE. It's not you pushing other people around. It's not you being controlling like you see with the EJs with their mobilizing SE. It's this you're much more receptive to conflict, and then you're also decisive in the conflict, and you take action and you strike immediately. And that's the whole part about SI being relaxed and SI being active. That, when I'm asking you, do you hesitate? And you're like, nope, not at all. I do it right away. But when you're in conflict, you deal with it head on, even though you're very receptive. You still are diving straight into it. So you also might find that you might appreciate or admire people who stand up for themselves as well with the SE in this position. Because when other people are doing the SE for you, you can find it very valuable and very wonderful. So if you have a partner that can help you push things around externally, that it can be a great thing. So especially when you're talking about ethics, since you're dating a beta, if the beta can help you with other people's ethics, that will be something that you will very much appreciate.
Yeah.
All right. Has everything I said made sense? Is it all cohesive?
Oh yeah. Yes, it has made a lot of sense. It's been very explanatory and cohesive with what I said, I think.
All right. Well, thank you. That's why I had to drink the coffee. I had to focus.
Yeah, I understand. But that sums it up as
As ILI.
ILI SI subtype?
ILI NISI.
NISI.
Yes, because the subtype
Okay.
I selected for you, let's read a little bit about it. I'm going to read out, or you could read about it yourself if you'd like, but I believe that your subtype is harmonizing, mostly because you're sensitive. You're very sensitive, and that was the thing that I see with the harmonizing subtypes over and over and over again. Is that you can see the wounded healer archetype. Liminal Sill is a great example of
That makes sense.
yeah of NI harmonizing, where the NI base harmonizing, where he is the wounded healer. That's his name, that's his handle that he runs around with. So it's these people who I think go through all this tumultuousness because they're very sensitive and impressionable people. They're very contacting. They want to know other people, they want to experience other people, but they're not very imposing upon them. This is the thing where you're talking about with philosophy. The philosophy just is, and if you can be enlightened by it, so be it. If you cling to it, you'll lose yourself. And that's where it is. It's not the forcing, it's not the dominating. It's the moving with it in the waves, and also with your own neuroticism that you've experienced. Interestingly enough, this is the subtype that we both have in common. I think this is why I'm so receptive in listening and typing sessions.
Oh yeah.
So we're not only benefit-ring, but we're both the same subtype. That's very interesting. So I guess instead of reading it out to you, I feel like that's not necessary. I'll just send you the information at the end of it, because I just definitely believe ILI harmonizing is going to be the final typing.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, CJ. That was wonderful. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could be of assistance and service. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.